Beyond the Locker Room with Tim Worley, where sports meets life. This isn't an X&O show. It's not about bad calls, bad coaching, or the college football playoffs. It's about the whys behind the negative headlines on today's collegiate and professional athletes. It's about character development and how the absence of life skills is destroying not just the careers, but the lives of the athletes. And here to take you beyond the locker room is your host, former University of Georgia All-American, 2013 SEC legend, and first-round NFL draft pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tim Worley.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Locker Room. I'm your host, Tim Worley. This is my weekly show that will come to you live every Monday night from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be sharing social commentary about current events going on within the world of sports. Now remember, this will not be a Monday morning quarterback show. I'm going to talk to you about the whys. Yes, I said the whys behind the negative behavior patterns plaguing high-performing amateur and professional athletes. Those whys will be examined through the lens of my personal experiences as an All-American in college and first-round draft pick in the NFL. I hope everybody enjoyed my debut last week. I sure did. But anyway, I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving and a great weekend. And before I go any further, I want to welcome back my buddy and great friend of Beyond the Locker Room, Chris Mascaro. Chris is the host of the popular radio show Thursday Night Tailgate and a partner of Beyond the Locker Room. Chris, congratulations are in order, buddy. Your show Thursday Night Tailgate was picked up last week by iHeartRadio. Man, that's fantastic.
I tell you what, Tim, we couldn't be more excited by that. You know, the great folks over at iHeartRadio picking up Thursday Night Tailgate now. You know, we're out there, you know, on their great site, you know, on top of, you know, being on Armed Forces Radio and Boost Radio and TuneIn and, you know, internet radio sites, you know, just everywhere. We are more humbled by the opportunity to be on iHeartRadio. We thank them for having, you know, faith in us because, you know, Tim, you know, just like your show is for you, you know, Thursday Night Tailgate for us is just a labor of love. Couldn't ask for a better co-host than Bob Lazari, great guest, Hall of Fame guest, you know, like yourself. We can't thank you enough for being a part of, you know, the TNT family. But, yeah, that was great news, and we couldn't be more excited to be a part of iHeartRadio.
Well, I'm happy for you guys, and I'm honored to be one of those main guys for Thursday Night Tailgate. Well, let's get into talking about the games last week. Last week was Rivalry Saturday, and, of course, we had some interesting games last week. The Dogs didn't do what I expected them to do. I mean, we were let down in one end and put down on the other end. Talking about the Arkansas and the Missouri game, and you know, we were really pulling for Arkansas to pull that thing off, but Missouri really looked good. I mean, they're you know, I was watching their running backs, Chris, and that number 32, I can't remember his name, but this kid was relentless. And, you know, and I got to give it to Missouri. They really stepped up when they needed to. And I just, you know, I was hoping that Arkansas would pull it off because I did want to see my Dogs in Atlanta this weekend. But, you know, it just didn't happen. Wasn't our time. But even this weekend, you know, losing to Georgia Tech, and I'll get into talking about that a little bit later. But also, you know, we saw one of the biggest games of the weekend was Bama versus Auburn, the Iron Bowl, and of course, you know, that game right there for the Auburn and Alabama fans. That is the game right there that will shut either side up for the rest of the year into next year. So that was a major game and was an exciting game, and I was glad to see that my wife's alma mater came away with the win. But what an exciting weekend, Chris. I mean, just an exciting weekend of college and professional football.
Oh, absolutely right. I tell you what, Tim, you know, the highest scoring Iron Bowl in the history of the rivalry, you know, to think that, you know, that game was going to end up being, you know, a 55-44 game, you know, who could have seen that coming? that both defenses. Alabama's got a heck of a defense, and to think that Auburn for a second straight year would rack up a bunch of points and a bunch of yards. All the yardage they gave up through the air. I never would have seen that coming. Never would have given Auburn credit for being able to throw the ball the way they did against Alabama's defense. But the resiliency of Alabama, that's why they're number one. That's why they're there year in and year out, fighting for a national championship, because they've got the resolve to make things like that happen. And boy, I couldn't feel worse for your your UGA dogs and all the guys that we've had the pleasure of knowing on Thursday Night Tailgate have been Georgia alums, and to see the way that game unfolded with the fumbles inside the 5-yard line twice in back-to-back drives. They steal one back from Georgia Tech to make that game a little bit closer. But to think that Georgia Tech, and I tell you what, Tim, and you may get into this later on in the show, but I kind of put this game on the shoulders of Mark Richt. Boy, the calling for a squib kick, when they squib kicked that thing, I thought, oh, this is going to be bad. And to give Georgia Tech life and to let them kick that field goal the way that thing unfolded, to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, boy, that had to be brutal for everyone in Dog Nation.
Well, and also I'd just like to say congratulations to the ACC Conference. The ACC Conference had an opportunity to compete with the best, and they dominated the SEC this past weekend, and congratulations. But, at the same time, I do agree with you, Chris. Some things we have to look at our coaches. We have to look at the decisions that they make. I didn't get a chance to see the game because I was on the job, so I had to really pay attention to it on the internet a little bit, just back and forth. And but I wish I could have saw it live. But unfortunately, we didn't come out successfully, and that saddens me. But anyway, Chris, we want to talk about tonight. Something that bothers me when it comes to character issues, and that issue is complacency. Complacency with a successful athlete. Now, and I want to use 4 football teams as an example, because these are some of the things that when just looking at these 4 teams, these are some of the things that I see. And first, I want to talk about Florida State football, and secondly, I want to talk about, of course, the University of Georgia football, which I'm very close to. And third, I want to talk about, maybe my wife wanted to talk about this one, but I really didn't, Chris, the Dallas Cowboys. and so she threw that in there because, being a Steeler guy, it's a sin to talk about the Cowboys. But,
there you go.
Like I said, once again, happy wife, happy life, and it's all about love up in here. Okay. And Chris, fourth, and the last thing we want to talk about is complacency within the University of Alabama football arena. Okay, and when I think about Florida State, here we have the defending national champions. Okay, and Florida State is loaded with talent, size, speed. I mean, unbelievable talent. But when you think about the defending national champions, when I look at some of the games that they played in this year, Florida State have struggled in about 5 or 6 games this year. I mean, games where when you look at it on paper, they should have blew people out. But, some people take this and they look at it, they say, well, it shows the championship caliber. It shows the national championship blood that they have in them, because they're able to come back through adversity and win games in the fourth quarter. But when you struggling every week in and week out, you barely got by Clemson, you barely got by Louisville, you barely got by Notre Dame. You struggle with Florida this past weekend. And when I look at that, Chris, to me it points directly to complacency, because sometimes when you're used to winning, sometimes sometimes players, they get the mindset of just we're Florida State, we just show up, and we're going to win. And I always want to take the approach that I don't care if I was playing a high school, I'm going all out. And I look at the complacency. I look at the comfort that sometimes the successful athletes settle in. And it bothers me because I see it a lot now. And I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on that, Chris? How do you feel about that?
You know, Tim, when you talk about complacency here and complacency with leadership and guys sort of resting on their laurels, when a guy like me who had, marginal athletic, ability looks at a guy like, and we talked a little bit about this last week, Tim, added Jameis Winston, players along that ilk that, have so much talent. And you see teams that, struggle like Florida State, like you mentioned, Tim. I look back, like you did, and look at, the schedule and the teams that they played, a 5-point win over Florida this past weekend, a 3-point win over Boston College the week before that, a 4-point win over unranked University of Miami, who got dominated by a rather average Pitt team. I'm a Pitt guy, right, from Pittsburgh, but watch the way Pitt dominated Miami, and Florida State only pulled off a 4-point win. You can continue to go back. Boy, we thought a 4-point win over Notre Dame, who at the time was, ranked number 5 in mid-October. Well, boy, Notre Dame is sure, fallen back to earth with, 5, straight losses now with that program. But, just to continue to barely beat teams that they are clearly superior to, you got to wonder, is it, you start reading your press clippings, do you just think you're better than you are? You think you can show up and win games, and then, you get into the, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and now you're in a sort of a, quote-unquote, a dogfight. You got to wonder what's going on there, right? To your point, Tim, guys that, teams that can pull on that reserve and, figure out, that we've sort of hung around, let these teams hang around, and we can win in the end. But is that really, you should be great, right? Florida State should be great. They should be dominating teams. So it's either, you got to look at it, either they're not as good as we really think they are, or they're not as good as they should be. Either one is a bad thing, and I agree, Tim. You got to wonder. To me, that comes from coaching down, right? Coaching makes you that much better, and they should be better than they are.
Yeah, and to me, it just points to laziness because, Florida State has just as much talent as anybody in the country, any football program in the country. And to come from behind like that, and I remember one game in particular. There were several games, Chris, that I felt like they should have lost. And when you look at the games, you look at it, maybe it was a bad call on the defendant side. I look at Louisville when they played Louisville. The one thing that kept Louisville from going down and driving was them going for it all instead of just picking up the first down. But it definitely points directly to laziness, and like you said, everything starts with the head, with leadership, and how you do one thing is how you do everything, and it all trickles down. That leadership trickles down, and when you look at complacency, you also got to look at the arrogance. There's an arrogance that's sweeping the world of sports now, mainly on the college level, and I just think that there's something that needs to be done. Some things needs to be changed. But Florida State, they're a great football team. I really do believe that. And you said it. You asked the question. Are they as good as people say they are, or they're not that good? It's yet to be seen because I feel like this. I've been saying all year long, somebody's going to come along and they're going to spank them. And for some reason, I believe that Georgia Tech, playing in the ACC championship, I believe that Georgia Tech they got a good shot at winning this game. And I believe Georgia Tech is the team that will do that. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Wow. So that's some bold prediction. Now, to your point, Tim, you look at Georgia Tech and, the season that they've had, obviously, riding, a big high after beating your in-state rival and beating, the University of Georgia. You go back, you looked at, a couple of weeks back, right? They put a hurt on Clemson, who was ranked number 19 at the time, beat them 28-6. Really put a 33-point win over North Carolina State, a 25-point win over Virginia, another 30 point game beating Pitt. So this team has certainly come into its own towards the end of the season, riding a 5-game winning streak. If someone could do it, it's certainly a team like Georgia Tech could come in and do that, particularly if Florida State keeps thinking that they can just show up and win games.
Yes, and that's the thing. And when you look at college football today, I really like the fact that there's really not one particular dominating team. I feel like, Chris, that in the top 15, maybe even the top 20, any team in the top 20 and down could beat anybody. And I kind of like it like that today because, we went through decades of those one or two teams that dominated. But now it's a little bit different, and it makes it a little more exciting because everybody, it used to be every given Sunday, but now it's every given Saturday.
Right.
You got to love it, though. But I am looking forward to seeing what Florida State's going to do for the rest of the year. And I got to be honest, if they don't pick it up, though, somebody's going to knock them off, and I think Georgia Tech is the team to do it. And them coming off a win against Georgia, they are pumped up. They're excited, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But we're going to talk about UGA, and we're going to keep this whole thing about complacency because these are the four teams that when I think of the word complacency, I see it bold in these four programs. When you talk about complacency and you talk about just the arrogance and taking your foot off the gas, one game comes to mind when it comes to UGA. And being a former UGA football player, student athlete, I don't want to think that I'm being biased here because I love my university. But when we watch the Florida game, that's the one game that stands out. And, we could even go back to the South Carolina game. And even in the South Carolina game, I felt like the players didn't lose that game. I felt like the coaches lost that game. And when you have guys like running backs in the backfield behind your quarterback like Todd Gurley and Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and Keith Marshall, and you're inside the 10-yard line, why won't you run the ball? But, we were able to get by South Carolina and win a lot of games, and we faced Florida. Florida struggled all year. Matter of fact, Chris, we had the week off. We had the week off before we went down to Jacksonville and played against the Florida Gators. And when you have a week off and you show up and you're not prepared, that's a coaching issue. Mm-hmm. That is a coaching issue. And I pointed directly to the coaching. And the fact that, I was in South Georgia, Chris, when this game went on. Matter of fact, I was in Dublin, Georgia, doing a couple of speaking events, and I actually had an opportunity to sit and watch the game. You got some diehard red and black UGA dog fans down in South Georgia, and I'm sitting there. They had this thing, watch the game with a former dog and this and that, and we're sitting there watching, and I got to be honest, Chris. By the time I think it was the second quarter, when they faked that field goal and ran it in for a touchdown, me and Dee were sitting there watching. We literally seen the life go out of the University of Georgia players, and I knew from that point on Georgia was going to lose that game. I knew it. I just saw the life. And when you have a week off and you don't prepare, Georgia just believed that they could just show up because Florida was struggling this year and they were just going to beat Florida. And the amazing thing is Florida only threw the ball 6 times, and they pounded Georgia on the ground. And I got to be honest, man, it kind of made me angry, Chris. I left in the third quarter and went back to my hotel room. I was mad, but yeah, man, I can't. It's hard for me to lose, but I can't accept losing when you give up. I can't accept that, and I point that issue directly to the coaching staff. You know what I mean? And just that complacency, just taking your foot off the gas, just showing up, and just because you're wearing that G, you're gonna beat somebody. It takes more than that. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
No, I couldn't agree with that more, Tim. I being a Steeler fan and a guy from Pittsburgh, and I see it, all the time when I watch our Steelers play. Even, to your point, you look at, this weekend for me, the Steelers playing the Saints. Steelers coming off a bye week, getting ready to play the Saints, a 4-7 New Orleans Saints team, and in a blink of an eye, they're down 35-16. Like, wait a minute. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. What are you doing? How do you let this team execute like that against you when you know what's coming? They're a 4-7 team. Everyone else in your divisions beat them. It's just they don't want to get off on a tangent, but you play down to the level of the competition. To your point, Tim, if with your example about Georgia, you can't show up wearing the G on your helmet, walking into a game when you're 6-1 going into that game against Florida, thinking that they're down. We're 6-1. We're one of the top-ranked teams in the country, and we're just going to win this game, and we're just going to have a good time, and away we go. No. You've got to prepare for every team as if they can beat you, because to your point, Tim, any given Saturday, any given Sunday, right? You remember a few years back, right? Appalachian State beating the University of Michigan? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Michigan thought they were just going to show up against this little school and they were just going to walk all over them. It was going to be 63-3, and then, we're just going to have this nice little party at the beginning of the season. No problem. No. If you don't prepare as if the next team is as good or better than you are, and you don't go in and execute, and you want to sleepwalk through the game, guess what? You're going to walk out of there with an L. And that's what's happened That's what happened to Jordan. That's what happened to the Steelers.
Well, it's definitely, and like I said, it's complacency. I mean, to throw away a conference game, it's clearly Georgia was the most dominant school in the SEC, and I just believe that the complacency is a major part, and at the same time, accept the mediocrity. And we're gonna stay on UGA for a minute. I feel like my beloved school have accepted mediocrity. And when it comes to the athletes, Chris, that Georgia is in the top 5 every year when it comes to high school recruiting. And Georgia has some of the best athletes in the country. And the fact that a mediocre season, let me go back a little bit. If you win 8 or 9 games, that's a little bit above mediocre, but the fact that you have the caliber athletes that you have every year on your team and preparing them, and we let games like a less than Florida slip by, South Carolina, or even Georgia Tech. This just can't happen. And because those guys are too good, and as a matter of fact, the seniors don't deserve that. The seniors did not deserve that, Chris, what happened this past Saturday. I look at guys like Ray Drew. Ray Drew blocked 2 field goals. You know what I mean? And this was his senior year. This guy was playing his heart out. But a lot of the athletes that they have, they're just too good. Even Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's a junior, but the kid blows his knee out. And the kid has given Georgia all he's got out there on the field for 3 years. I would love to see him come back, but I don't think that's going to happen. But, there's something that needs to be done. And I gotta point directly to the leadership, the University of Georgia, and just that culture of complacency and mediocrity. And there's some statistics too, because I've had an opportunity to get back at the UGA and speak with the team, speak with some of the leadership there. And for some reason UGA seems to think that everything's in order and they got it all together. But I got some statistics here. When it comes to discipline problems, and Georgia had 8 arrests this year, 8 football players arrested in 2014. And this news right here says that it's the most of any D1 school or pro team, second to Winthrop University. But guess what, Chris? If I sound angry, guess what? I am angry because I'm tired of the foolishness when it comes to the University of Georgia. I'm tired of seeing mediocrity accepted. But they keep saying, yeah, we got it all together, we're straight. No, you're not. And until they receive the stuff that they need to receive, and I'm talking about leadership, Georgia's going to continue to have mediocre seasons. And they do have national championship caliber players. But what else is going on? That's why I point to the leadership. What else is going on within that university? Why can't they get over that hump? Am I wrong for saying this, Chris? Help me out. Am I wrong? Why can't they get over that hump?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. You look back over, their football results over the last several years, And Georgia always seems to be the team with 2 or 3 losses, sometimes 4 or 5. They've had some down years. But to your point, Georgia's one of the premier college football programs, out there. And, historically, you can go back, as far back as you want to say the University of Georgia has always had great talent, great players, but they only have, they only have 1980, right? We hear it so often, here in Georgia, all about 1980. Well, yeah, I mean, that was a great year, but they haven't had it since, and it was a long time, before that. But they've always had great players. So why can't they get over the hump? That is a great question. You would think that every year the University of Georgia, particularly now since the SEC's got the East and the West, should be battling. It should be almost an annual battle. It's Georgia versus whoever wins the West, right? Because there's a lot of great teams in the West too, whether it's Alabama or Auburn or LSU, and you go down the list. But you would think with the talent that Georgia's able to recruit and what they've got there, that they would be a perennial East Division champion, and fighting for, now we got the 14 playoffs. They should be fighting for a national championship all the time, but they always seem to lose that second game and then that third game, and now now they're done. So, and I think that's what happened to them this weekend, by the way, Tim. I think once Missouri won that game, I think the air was out of it, and it was like, all right, we're going to go through this game. If we win or lose, who cares? We're not going to the SEC championship. It's not really going to make any difference. We'll end up back at the Peach Bowl like we do every year in Atlanta, and away they go. But it's got to be coaching. For me at this point, Tim, I think this is where you're going. I think to me at this point, it's the athletic director, it's the football coach, and it just can't get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, still you play to win. I mean, whether or not we shouldn't have been dependent on Missouri to win a game in order for us to go to the SEC championship anyway. We should have took care of business. But when you think about it, how can you not get up for a game? How can you not? I mean, when you look at the statistics, Georgia should have dominated Georgia Tech. When you look at the way Georgia's offense has been running, I mean, Nick Chubb has rushed for over 120 yards in 6 straight games. And to me, when a running back is able to do that and score those many points, that should be a victory. If you can score 30, 35 points, you should win the game. The defense should do their job. But how can you not get up? How can you not prepare? Even when it goes back to the University of Florida in Jacksonville, playing in the what they used to call the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. How can you not prepare for that? I don't understand it. What is the mindset of these young athletes today? What is the mindset of these coaches today? How can you not be prepared? And how do you not make adjustments when you are getting spanked? How do you not make the adjustments? That itself speaks to the arrogance. When we look back at the Florida game, there was no adjustments made. Florida was running the ball up the middle and bouncing and outside, and there was no contain. They did it for 4 quarters. Threw the ball 6 times. And I know I've mentioned that before, but I'm going to talk about it again because I haven't forgiven and I haven't got through it yet. But it makes me angry, man, and you make no adjustments. What is that all about? And it reminds me, I got to mention the Arkansas-Missouri game, too. That sort of reminded me of the same thing because when you look at that quarterback and you watch that game, a lot of people look at that quarterback, Arkansas quarterback, and say, okay, man, he's a very heroic guy. He's a warrior. He stayed. But you know what, Chris? I didn't see it that way. The way I saw it, to me, that was being selfish. He didn't put his team in the best position to win because guess what? He wasn't getting it done. He wasn't getting it done. And I believe that he should have took himself out. Because this guy threw about 4 or 5 passes, way off target. And his back or his side or whatever was hurting, and he couldn't even hit his target. And to me, that was being selfish. Am I wrong, Chris? What do you think?
I don't know, Tim. That's sort of the age-old thing, right? With football players, you got the warrior mentality, and is it better for me to come out there and play? You talk about, some athletes, is 75% of me better than 100% of my backup, right? I don't know. Some talents it is, and some talents it's not. So it's we always appreciate the guy that's willing to play through the pain and play through injury and get himself out there and all that sort of thing. But you're right, Tim. At some point there's a line, right? At some point there's a line that your limp, your ability to throw, your ability to catch, your ability to play the position you're in based on whatever ailment you have, whatever's hurting, actually becomes a liability out there. And boy, we appreciate you. We appreciate your willingness to do it. But at some point, the coach, needs to be able to take a look and say, you know what, you're doing us more harm than good. We love you, kid. We appreciate you, but you're doing us more harm than good. I got to sit you down.
Yeah, and I just, excuse me, I just believe that the guy from the quarterback from Arkansas taking himself out of the game would have gave Arkansas the best chance to win. But that's hearsay, underwater under the bridge. That's over with. I have to wait till next year. But let's go on to our next topic, and that's complacency with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is a gimme right here. This is a mulligan. This is strictly for my wife. My wife is a huge Dallas Cowboy fan ever since she was a little girl. Matter of fact, she wore Tony Dorsett uniform and jersey and helmet for a Halloween outfit when she was about 7 years old. Yeah. So, and here's the amazing thing, Chris, that the Walter Camp All-American Awards banquet last year where we all gathered together, Tony Dorsett was there, and my wife had a chance to meet him for the first time, and she told him what she did and was wearing him as a Halloween costume, and he said to her, I'm sure you got a lot of prizes, didn't you? But, when it comes to the Cowboys, you have guys like Tony Dorsett, the Tom Landrys, the Roger Staubachs, the Tuttle Jones, and the Emmitt Smiths, the Michael Irvins, and you can't take away from that organization and some of the Hall of Fame caliber people that they produced through there. But when we talk about the Cowboys, I look at the game that they played this past weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles, and you go back and you watch them compete on Monday night against the I think it was the New York Giants. And by the way, Beckham had one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, he did.
This guy was able to catch the ball with 3 fingers. How do you do that? And it just tells you he's mastered his craft. When Dallas was able to come back and win that game in New York, but you turn around and you go back home and you get blew out by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I asked the question, what's going on there? And a lot of people like to say, okay, there wasn't enough time in between. The guys had to make that trip back from New York and turn around and practice and get prepared for the Eagles to come into Dallas. But I just believe that's an excuse. How do you not get prepared? How do you not get prepared on Thanksgiving Day in your home stadium and prepared to play the Philadelphia Eagles? Matter of fact, that is a rivalry game. That's a conference game. There's been some serious battles between the Eagles and the Cowboys over the years. But I asked the question, what is it that you can't – I mean, what makes you take your foot off the gas when you're on national television on Thanksgiving Day and you can't compete with the Philadelphia Eagles? Talk to me, Chris. Tell me something good, man. I want to know.
I don't know, Tim. That's another head scratcher, right? It's not like the Dallas Cowboys don't know they're going to be playing on Thanksgiving every day, right? I mean, every year they play Thanksgiving games every single year, right? It's a tradition. You get the Lions and you get the Cowboys, so they know what's coming. So they're not prepared for that. To your point, is an excuse. When I look over, what Dallas is doing and how they're playing. Tim, you alluded to this a moment ago. You look at they're coming off a game against a really bad Giants team that they barely won that game. They win by 3 points. An uninspiring win, the week, prior to the bye week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They ended up winning that game by 14, but it was a lot closer than the score would indicate. Prior to that, they lose to Arizona. They lose to the Washington Redskins. This is a team that feels like, remember early in the year, right? After the week 1 loss to San Francisco, they run off a string of 6 straight wins, and the running game is unbelievable, and this is going to be the Dallas Cowboys that everyone has wanted for years. It's going to compete now into the playoffs. Well, now you got to pump the brakes because they're 2-3 in their last 5 games. So now they're competing to kind of stay alive. Now a game behind the Eagles. I'm going to get another shot at the Eagles here in a couple of weeks. So. The Cowboys seem to be that team, over since the 90s, after the triplets with the Aikman and Emmett and Michael Irvin and the great teams that they had there in the middle 90s. This is a team that wants to break your heart. Right? They tease you. You see some glimpses of greatness. You see some glimpses of a team that could be competitive, and then they break your heart. That seems to be the Tony Romo thing, right? The guy's just going to break your heart. And they seem to be going down that lane again. They're going to start breaking your heart again. So, this is not a team built, for a long stretch of success. I think this is a marketing team that Jerry Jones. You want to talk about arrogance? You look at the owner of that team.
Yeah, well, Jerry, he wants to do it all. But my wife called the Cowboys Jekyll and Hyde. But when you look at the Cowboys, though, the way they jumped out the gate and started running this year, we were like, okay, here's a glimpse, like you said earlier, of the former teams, like the triple head, Aikman, Smith, and Irvin. You had Des Bryant and Murray and Tony Romo. But one of the things I've saw with the Cowboys is Tony Romo. I mean, when he's on, he's on. And when he's off, he's off. When he's bad, he's bad. But at the same time, too, Tony Romo is another one. He's a great athlete. I believe he's a great athlete. I believe he's a pretty decent quarterback. But he's another one that has that warrior mentality. And he sometimes when he needs to take himself out of the game, he won't take himself out of the game. But at the same time, even when it comes to the backups, people need to be prepared. It's not just the starters that you see the complacency in, or the coaches, but also people that are coming off the bench. People need to be prepared. These cats get paid a lot of money to ride the bench. And I know, when after my suspension and I came back in 1993, the Steelers were paying me a lot of money, and I wasn't even starting. You know what I mean? But I had to be prepared just in case Barry Foster went down or anybody else went down, we just have to be ready. But it's complacency. We that is a pattern that needs to be broken. And like you said, it's all leadership. I think if everything's trickled down from the top, and once the leadership gets it and don't put up with it, I had an opportunity to play for Vince Dooley, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Dave Weinstead, and I'm gonna tell you, those 4 coaches right there, they wasn't gonna put up with complacency, but at the same time, they had to manage it, Chris. They had to manage it because, it was a different time back then. But still, you have to – it's hard. And I know the coaches know this too. It's hard to get up for these games week in and week out. But that's your job. You have to get these guys prepared. And I've heard somebody say – I heard a coach say one time that, on the NFL level, you don't need the rah-rah coach. You don't need the coach to come in there and pump you up because you guys are getting paid so much money and a ton of money. You should be able to prepare yourself and mentally get prepared yourself. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because there are sometimes you have to help your players stay focused. What are your thoughts?
Oh, there's no question. It's interesting. You mentioned, the coaches that you got to play for, particularly in Pittsburgh. Well, I can't imagine there are 2 guys completely different than going from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher, right? you want to talk about a guy that's going to, rah and get you going. Boy, that certainly was Bill Cowher. You want to talk about a guy who thought, he didn't need to motivate you, and if he had to motivate you, he was going to fire you, and that was Chuck Noll. So you sort of had the two extremes you got the opportunity to play with, but there's no question in my mind that the coaching staff should be able to feel what's going on in the locker room. And if there isn't, an air of excitement, there isn't, some electricity in the air prior to game time, and before that, just kind of coming about and going about your business during the week and preparing yourself in practice to be able to play that game. If there's not an air of excitement, an air of electricity, the coaches got to start, turning the key to get that going. And if they can't, then that's how your team's going to come out flat. If you don't know that they're flat, you don't know that they're lifeless in there, and or if you do know it and you don't do anything about it, when they show up on Saturday or they show up on Sunday, they're going to lose that game.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, let me go back. I want to talk about Chuck Noll for a second too, when it comes to just coaching styles. And like I said before, Chuck Noll is one of those guys. He wasn't going to put up with it, complacency. And out of all the coaches that I had, I felt like Chuck Noll, especially on the professional level, Chuck Noll was that coach that really, he rode me. And I know why he rode me, because he saw my potential. He saw the type of running back I was. He saw the type of all the athletic ability that I had. And one of the things about Chuck believed in practicing hard. And, I haven't been to any NFL training camps in years just to be a spectator. But from my understanding, they don't really do a whole lot in training camp anymore as far as physical contact. But let me tell you about Chuck Noll. Now, Chuck, he's straight old school. People don't remember Chuck Noll blocked for Jim Brown. And the late, great Chuck Noll, I love him. Yes, sir, he blocked for Jim Brown. And one of the things that we did, one of the things that why it was so hard to play the Steelers when you came into Three Rivers Stadium is, we prepared. We practiced hard. We practiced on that old raggedy artificial turf field in Three Rivers Stadium. And you would think that Fridays we would have the day off. We would take it easy. But Friday, Chris, was what we call goal line day. Friday is what we call going wide open on the goal line, and whoever gets knocked out gets knocked out. And when you have guys like Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green and Gerald Williams and Rod Woodson and guys like that on the other side of the ball on the goal line, and we're wide open, Tyrone Stowe, man, that's what made the games look so easy when game day showed up on Sunday. We went at it. And today I understand that we have all the rules now with concussions and all these things. They don't do that stuff anymore. But Chuck definitely old school, and he wasn't going to put up with complacency. And he was one of those coaches that had us prepared for every game. So I can't ever say that when it came to Chuck Noll and the coaching staff with the Steelers, that the coaches was the fault or stuff. 99% of the time it was us guys not playing the way we should have played. But when it comes to Bill Cowher, he was a little bit different. He was the guy that you could talk to. You actually had to wear a shield over your face so you wouldn't get wet up when he's talking to you. Hey, Chris, I can remember we have fun. I can just remember one time we were playing the Falcons on Monday night in Atlanta in 1993, and we were spanking the Falcons pretty good. And Cowher he came up to me and he said, "Hey Tim, you want to go down on the kickoff and knock the devil out of somebody?" And he showered me, man. I was like, "Yeah, coach, I'll do it." He just sprayed me, man. But you're talking about an outstanding human being and a great coach. And I just thank God that I had an opportunity to play for those caliber coaches. Just Hall of Fame caliber coaches, man, and just an awesome opportunity. But good luck with the Cowboys. I don't know how far they're going to take things this year, and hopefully they'll look at that game over the Thanksgiving weekend and learn from it and move forward, because it is getting down to grind time now and playoff time. But good luck to the Cowboys. Let's go into talking about Alabama football. And, what an outstanding game we saw this weekend. People say, well, you went to Georgia and you root for Alabama. Well, like I said, my wife is an alumnus of Alabama. As a matter of fact, a graduate of Alabama. And like I said before, happy wife, happy life. And Alabama is actually my second favorite team in college football. And Georgia, of course, is my first. And we are definitely not a house divided, Chris. We are a house double blessed. That's what we call it. And when it comes to Alabama, you saw glimpse of what we've seen for years now in domination. You saw that national championship. You saw that greatness come out of the players through adversity. And you saw the world had a chance to see some of the players perform and had a chance to see coaches perform and coaches make adjustments. I look at the way Alabama played in the first half. That was probably one of the worst first halves they played all year long, even compared to the Ole Miss game, because Auburn was dominating them. They were wearing them out on defense. And, Nick Marshall just had a complete historic day on Alabama's secondary. But when they made the adjustments and came back out the second half, that right there showed you why they call Tuscaloosa Titletown. And, some folk may think that, well, why am I Georgia Bulldog and riding the Alabama Crimson Tide's job? I'm not riding. I just give credit where credit is due. They have a mentality down there. But even with that mentality, even with that tradition of winning championships, there's still, I saw a glimpse of complacency. Because when it comes to Alabama and wearing that A, a lot of these players, Alabama gets some of the best recruits in every year. And a lot of these players, they think just because they show up and put that A on their chest and walk out on that field just because of that winning tradition in Tuscaloosa, that they're just going to win. It's not going to happen like that. And we all know that Nick Saban, he has a program, and you need to buy into that program. And a lot of the five-star athletes come in and they have to ride the pine. They don't understand that. And Nick Saban talked about complacency back in 2009, Chris. He talked about, and matter of fact, I think the way he talked about it, he pretty much predicted those two back-to-back losses with Auburn and Oklahoma. And that was a sure, clear sign of what he was talking about in 2009, complacency. These guys got used to winning. They didn't buy into what Nick was talking about, and when it was time for them to show up to perform, it just didn't happen. And that's what you saw when they lost against Auburn last year, when they lost in the bowl game against Oklahoma. And what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
No, I agree with you, Tim. Like we say, we've said it throughout the course of this show, any given Saturday, any given Sunday. And, you can't ever start reading your press clippings and thinking that you're better than you are. Because the moment that you give in to, I don't need to prepare that much this week. We've been doing it all season long. We're the number one team in the country. We're going to show up and we're going to win this bowl game because we always win. You start believing that sort of thing, you start losing your edge. And when you lose your edge and you lose that drive and you lose the desire to win ball games, then that's when you start to lose. And that's when the program starts to, take a bad downfall. And that's when players start to get themselves in trouble because you feel like you don't need to work that hard anymore because we're going to win. Of course we're going to win. We're Alabama. Of course we're going to win. We're Florida State. Of course we're going to win. We're the University of Georgia, and this is just Georgia Tech. When you start doing that and you start believing that and you start buying into that, you work a little less hard. When you work a little less hard, the other team is going to work a little bit harder because they want to knock you off, and they're still engaged. And that's how you start to lose ball games. That's how you start to lose bowl games. That's how you continually finish in the second 10 instead of the top 10.
Exactly. And it puts me in mind, when you take on that mindset, it just reminds me of when I was able to cross over to the NFL ranks and go in and play for the Steelers. I tell this story all the time. I talk about it. Just when I arrived, Chris, when I arrived to the show was the NFL. The show was the multi-million-dollar first-round draft pick running the football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, see, when I arrived, I took my foot off the gas. I took my foot off the gas because, complacency was wearing me out. And also, see, my complacency came from a sense of fear. Because, at the time, the Steelers were pretty much putting everything on my shoulders because the Steelers had struggled for a long time in their running game. And finally they were able to get a back in there that can make some things happen. Just one of those big 230-pound, run a 4.3 running back, strong and can run. But at the same time, I took my foot off the gas. And once I got into the city of Pittsburgh, I began to how can I say that? I just began to have too much fun, Chris. And even at the University of Georgia, we can get caught up in that just having fun. And what happens? The off-the-field activity becomes more important than what you're there for. It becomes more important than what you're hired for. I was hired to do a job for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and for that city of Pittsburgh, in the NFL. But having a good time, fun came more important to me. And when I look back, when I talk about this sometimes, when I look back, and I spent a lot of years remorseful to the fact that every team that I played for, which two teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Rooney family and the Chicago Bears, the McCaskey family, and I asked myself the question, did they get a return on their investment? And my answer would be no. And that's something that I went through. I went through remorse about that because they didn't get a return on investment. Why? Because Tim Worley took his foot off the gas. Tim Worley was having too much fun. Football was secondary once I arrived to the show. But, I look at that. That's my fault. It had nothing to do with the coaches that were speaking over my life. It had nothing to do with the coaches that coached me because all the way from Little League all the way up until my last year in the NFL, I had great coaches and great people in my life. But there was something inside of me that was driving me that kept me in fear, that kept me actually fearing success, Chris. And that gave me a complacency mindset. And I began to allow the things off the field to dominate my life. And that's the one thing that I do have regrets about. And, and now, given the opportunity now, that's why I'm so passionate and bold when it comes to these athletes today. I just love to get in there and talk to them. Look, man, here's the situation, man. You got a platform, bro. You're doing something that most people dream of doing. There's 1% of every college athlete make it to the professional level when it comes to football, okay? And and I was able to be in that 1%. And I stepped back and I'm like, okay, did I blow it? Did I maximize? Did I take full advantage of the opportunity that I had? No, I didn't. And I'm man enough to admit that, Chris. And so that's why I'm so passionate about getting out there, talking to these young men, and just letting them know the opportunity that they have and how to go about that. And my question is, how do we get these young men to listen? How do we and when I think of Jameis Winston, I know we wasn't talking about him tonight, but when I think of him, I'm like, somebody's got to love him enough to tell him, look, brother, listen, man, please slow it down. Somebody got to love him enough to get in his face and tell him, look, you're going to have to change your ways, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm glad that somebody loved me enough to get in my face and tell me, because I'm going to tell you, the hell that I went through, Chris, and when God pulled me out of it, and the people that he put in my life to pull me out of it, let me tell you something, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't comfortable. I had to learn some hard stuff. I had to hear some hard stuff, but it was that hard stuff that helped me come up out of that pit. The hard stuff, the stuff that we don't want to hear. And sometimes, we have to get angry. We have to get mad in order to move forward. And I told the story last week, in the show, how the counselor, the guy that I had counseling me, he made me so mad, but guess what? He helped me to the point where I was ready to body slam him. You know what I mean? But I'm serious. I was ready to put him on the floor. But guess what? He stood that ground with me, and that's exactly what I needed. And he helped me pull those bitter roots out of the ground, Chris. Those bitter roots that was destroying my life. I believe that there's a king and a little boy in every man. And see, it was that little boy in me that was sabotaging everything where God meant for the king to roam. And that's why I said, just say your talent will get you in the room once again, but your character is what keeps you in the room.
Right.
So, it's just amazing, and I just thank God that I had an opportunity to bounce back and just be a part of a positive thing. I didn't get a chance. No, I had the chance, but I blew the chance to do the things that I had dreams and desires to do in the NFL as a player. But you know what? God has given me an opportunity on the professional level and on the collegiate level to stick my hand back in there and reach back and help some people that want it. And I want to help the guys that want that help. I want to help the guys that's asking the question, hey, man, what do I need to do? What's going on? How can I be better at this? How can I stay focused? How can I live a life where I'm not putting myself in a situation to get in trouble or anything? And I'm just that guy because I went through it. So. Right. Amen. But anyway, bro, what are your thoughts?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Tim, we've been an advocate, of yours for years saying, that the NFL, needs to turn to you to come and talk to at, the rookie symposiums, to talk at, teams when they're coming into training camp. I'm a little tired of seeing, Adam Pac-Man Jones been going in there and having those conversations. A guy who's just, messed up last week, going in there telling rookies, don't do as I continue to do this other thing. Well, you know what, guys, it needs to be you that goes in there and said, look, I'm a guy who had every opportunity to, do things in the NFL to achieve my dreams. And here are the things that happened to me along the way. Here's what approached me and how got me sideways. Watch out for when someone tells you this. Watch out when someone invites you there. Watch out when someone asks you to do this, right? Because this is how I got turned sideways, and this is how I, as you've talked about many times, Tim, sort of sabotaged my own career. So don't do these things, right? And I've been there. I've had the conversations. I've been down on the floor. I've been tased. I've been, all of these places. But now look where I'm at now.
Yeah.
So listen to me because I'm telling you that this is how to avoid those sort of situations. And I'm certainly looking forward to the day that the NFL office calls you and brings you in as somebody that goes around to every team and shares your story.
Yes. Yeah, me too. It's not just a one-off. Just say don't do this, don't this. You got to get in there. You got to build relationships with these guys. These guys want to be able to trust people, and that's the way I was. I wanted to be able to trust. I couldn't trust nobody back then. And and that's how you have to establish those relationships. And I look forward to doing that because it's more of a fathering thing than anything. I mean, you can tell guys this, don't do this, don't do that. Yeah. It's not going to happen to me. But it's more of a fathering thing. I said the same thing. It's not going to happen to me, but guess what? It did happen to me. But I thank God that I was able to come through through this whole process by His grace and mercy, and get an opportunity to share and give back. But anyway, Chris, I think we go ahead and need to make that transition into closing. I'm always, brother, we're going to do like the Red Sea did. We're going to split. And I just want to tell you, great job tonight.
Same to you.
I love that one, bro. They do like the Red Sea. We're going to split, But I just want to tell you, man, great job. I appreciate you being on the show with me, man. And next week I'll be discussing the different ways athletes press the sabotage button. And I want to remind everyone how you can connect with us. Our website is WorleyGlobalEnterprises.com. You can sign up for updates, listen to show archives, and check out our blog there. My Twitter handle is @WorleyGlobalBiz. Please also check out our page on Facebook at facebook.com/WGEINC and give us a like. Chris, congratulations again on getting picked up by iHeartRadio. Tell everyone how they can connect with you on Thursday Night Tailgate.
Well, you can go to our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You can listen to any of our archived episodes for free from there. You can stream it, download it. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at CT Mascaro. You can also follow my wonderful co-host, Bob Lazari. He is at Bob_Lazari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. So we're on the air 8 to 10 o'clock every Thursday night. You can find us on Blog Talk Radio, plus picked up right after that on iHeartRadio and downloadable and streamable from there. You can also find us on BoostRadio.com and on the Armed Forces Radio Network. So we hope you listen and tune in. It's we have a great time, and Tim, like I've said at the beginning of the show, it's always an honor and a privilege to share the airways with you. And as a Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Famer, we can't thank you enough for being a part of the TNT family. You're fantastic.
Likewise, Chris. My thanks to our announcer, Joe Laganusa, for the great job he does with our intro. On behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone for listening. We appreciate you most. Until next week, good night, and remember, refuse mediocrity.